What's your name?
Kevin Albert Ryan.
How old are you?
I am coming up on my 84th birthday. I guess I'm 83.
What was your date of birth?
October 7, 1932.
What is your life profession?
I've been a teacher.
Okay. Can you summarize your life timeline?
Could you explain that?
Yeah, so, like, for example, 18 I went to college, and then this age I graduated, and then I did this. That kind
Oh,
of thing.
okay. My life is really divided into two big slices. When I got off the plane in Toronto in September 2nd, 1950, at 18, that's when I inherit the world that I understand now. Before that, it's just sort of a series of memories of, I don't understand the very foolish young man that I went through elementary and high school with in sort of a fog. At college, that's when I started, I guess, thinking, not that I had was thinking great thoughts, but my sense of myself is really from when I started college. So, but then on that, my college years, which were interrupted profoundly by after my first year of college, I had thought off and on between girlfriends that I thought I wanted to become a priest. And when I was in my freshman year in college, I really gave a serious thought, and so I figured, well, I ought to try it out. Mm-hmm. And so I spent 3 years in religious life in the congregation of St. Basil, which to me are like a bank account, in that I figured I banked more stuff during those 4 years, 3 years, because I learned how to study. I had not been a very good student. I learned self-discipline. I learned just how to be quiet. And after 2 years, I realized that this was really not the life for me. I had a very dramatic experience that I'll save for another day. And I said to my spiritual advisor, you know, I'm really having doubts about whether I should be going forward. And he said, well, he was a wonderful man. He said, well, all you have to do is follow the rule. And every religious community has a set of rules by which you live. And he said, you know, if in the spring you still feel this way, well, this is God's way of telling you that it's been great to have you, but it's time to go home, which I did. And then I came back to what was a wonderful final year of college. I went back to Toronto, University of Toronto, St. Michael's College, and had a great time. And right after that, I went in the Navy and spent 4 years, most of the time at sea, going to ports all over the world, which was terrific. In the meantime, reading, because I was a flyer, and so when you're not flying, you don't have a lot of command.
We're in the middle of something. We're doing an interview.
Remind me to oil that door. I got out of the Navy, and I had been a psychology major. My religious community was short on psychologists, and so I was sort of slotted to that. And I had decided to become a high school counselor. That was my goal. You know, it was part of the religious idea, I guess, of mucking around in people's lives. But in New York State, you could not become a guidance counselor until you had actually been a teacher. So I became an English teacher, and I kept my eye on these really wonderful guys and women that were guidance counselors, and I realized what a dull life it was. They sat in an office sort of listening to kids telling the story about their drunken parents and the fact that they have this problem and that, and they couldn't do much about it. And it was all very secular too. You couldn't say, well, you know, have you prayed about that, or have you talked to your priest about that, or have you read anything? Anyway, in the meantime, I fell in love with being with teaching. I just really liked that. And now we're now 26. I'll be trying to be quicker on this. I had been dating a lot of women, and nothing was sort of clicking, and I was about to give up the whole thing, and I met your mother, your grandmother, and boom, it was a thunderbolt relationship. I knew the first time, from the first date, that she was the woman I wanted to marry, and I had a tough time convincing her, and we had a rocky relationship. We're both kind of strong personalities. And so we got married, and I began doctoral training at Stanford University, which was very lucky because I hit the world of academia right at the time when they were desperate for professors, and I rode a wave all my life. Enormously fortunate. Young men like your friend the Downs and others have a much more difficult time, and that's been the really lucky part of my life. Professionally, it was wonderful, low stress, high reward. And I retired. Come in.
We're in the middle.
In the middle of, when I was about 40, I got a wonderful scholarship. I had been a professor at the University of Chicago. I got a wonderful opportunity to have a full year off at Harvard, where they paid my salary, they gave me an office and secretary and so forth, and I had no responsibilities. And your aunt Hillary was 4 years old. Your mother was in your mother's womb at the time, desperately anxious to get out. But having a 4-year-old daughter, a 4-year-old daughter who was very interested in the world, and I got interested in how is this girl going to get a conscience? How is she going to get a sense of right and wrong? And so because I had this year off, and I was able to get my writing done, I switched my careers, and I started to be concerned with what's called moral development or character formation, and that has been the work of my academic career. Retired in 1999, 17 years ago, and it seems like about 20 minutes ago. I've been fortunate to be been able to keep very active on boards and writing and being asked to do stuff, which is a blessing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was your first memory?
My first memory was when I was 3 years old. I was at a place like this called Point Pleasant, and it was with my family, which we didn't travel very much, but somehow we were on this beach in the summer, and I remember at the table and eating a luncheon plate of mashed potatoes, carrots, and a little hamburgers, and looking up, and there was my Uncle John.
Aww. What was the hardest thing about growing up for you?
Oh, dealing with my own faults. Being overly self-conscious, wanting desperately to be liked too much. Just continually getting in my own way.
Okay. What's your best high school memory?
Well, it's just part of my superficial nature. I remember when at the junior prom, my date became the queen of the prom, and I was the king of the prom. So,
Oh, nice.
Yeah. It was not winning this prize or that prize. It was, but yeah.
What year did you go to college?
I went to college in September 2nd, 1950.
Okay. Where did you go to college?
I went to St. Michael's College of the University of Toronto, which was a sort of on the English model of a university made up of these distinct colleges where you lived. You know, they were all Catholics in this college. Over there were Presbyterians. Over there, the atheists, and you participated in the university life. A lot of courses were sort of open to everyone, but then you took your philosophy and theology and other courses in your college. It was a wonderful education.
Nice. Okay. And you already mentioned this, but what did you study in college?
I wanted to study English, but the not the novice master, but the head of the order took me out to for a walk every year. He kind of reviewed your progress with you, and he said, "What would you like to major in?" And I said, "I wanted like to major in English literature." And he said, "Yeah, fine." He said, "You did very well in psychology, and we need psychologists." So that's where I went.
What did you do after college?
Right after college, I went in the Navy again for 4 years, traveled all around the world.
Okay. What did you do in the Navy?
I was an airborne air controller, which meant that I flew on a carrier-based squadron. That meant by that was a group of people who were made up of pilots who flew the planes and airborne air controllers that did the mission. And the mission was really to protect the fleet from attacks from jet planes, or now would be missiles, through radar detection. Also looking for submarines that wanted to attack the fleet too.
And what year was this?
That was 1955 to 59.
Okay. What is your best and worst memory of the Navy?
There were so many good memories. That's really hard. It was just a really good time. I remember one time after I got out of the Navy, I was in the reserve, and I was a high school teacher. And every month I went for 2 days, and so it was called active reserve. And I had not gotten a haircut, and in those days my hair was much too long. And an officer came over and just chewed me out for that.